Imagine you wake up the morning after you finally become the guy everyone chased. And instead of relief, you feel something colder. A deadline. Not a contract deadline, a legacy deadline. Because 2026 isn't just next season in Formula One, it's a hard reset. Different cars, different demands, different ways to win. And that's why Lando Norris's offseason doesn't look like a champion's vacation. It looks like a quiet, controlled rebuild. Less smiles for cameras, more sweat in silence. Because the scary truth is this: winning a title proves you can climb the mountain once. But Formula One only respects you when you can live at the top. So today, we're not talking about the champagne. We're talking about the grind nobody films. The off-season where Lando is trying to turn himself into a champion that the sport can't figure out and tear down. You can feel the shift around Lando the second the season ends. The headlines don't say future star anymore. They say standard. And that's brutal, because standard is where the pressure lives. When you're the underdog, a podium feels like a miracle. When you're the champion, a podium feels like a question. And Lando knows exactly what comes next. Every lap will be compared to champion pace. Every radio message will become a clip. Every bad qualifying will turn into a narrative that the title was luck, timing, car, anything except him. That's what happens to every new champion, especially the ones people think are too nice to keep it. Lando's been hearing versions of that his whole career. Too emotional, too honest, too human for a sport that worships cold killers. The irony is that honesty might be his greatest weapon now, if he learns how to protect it. And here's the part most fans miss. 2026 isn't a small tweak year. It's the kind of rule change that rewrites what fast even means. The cars are expected to change in how they create grip, how they manage drag, how they deploy energy, how drivers time their moments. It's not just drive the wheels off it, it's drive the wheels off it while making 10 micro decisions a lap about energy, aero mode, positioning, and risk, and still staying calm enough to do it again and again and again over a season. If you've ever wondered why some drivers look unstoppable in one era and suddenly look normal in the next, this is why. Not because they forgot how to drive, because the job changed. So Lando's off-season training isn't just about getting fitter. That's too simple. Every F1 driver is fit. This is about becoming adaptable, building a body that can handle unpredictable grip changes, and a mind that can process chaos without panicking. You don't train for that by just lifting heavy and posting it on Instagram. You train for it by doing work that looks boring from the outside but feels like war inside your chest. Repetition under fatigue, reaction drills when your brain is already cooked, long sessions where you're forced to stay precise when your arms are shaking. Champions don't just train to be strong. They train to be consistent when everything hurts. Start with the physical side, because people love to reduce it to neck strength and call it a day. Yes, neck and core matter, they always will. But what changes in a new era is how the load hits you. When the car's behavior shifts, when downforce changes, when the balance moves, when you're not glued to the track the same way, the driver is constantly correcting. Not dramatic corrections like a rally car, but tiny ones. And tiny corrections, repeated hundreds of times, are what turn a fine driver into a driver who looks exhausted and sloppy at the end of a race. Lando's focus has to be on the muscles that stabilize him when the car isn't giving him the same predictable platform. That means core stability that holds posture under G-force, shoulders that don't collapse, and a neck that can absorb load while your eyes stay calm and your braking points stay accurate. But the real secret? Reaction training. The stuff nobody talks about because it sounds like something an esports player would do. In modern F1, your reactions aren't only about avoiding crashes, they're about extracting lap time from moments that last a blink. A rear end that steps out slightly, a gust of dirty air mid-corner, a battery deployment decision that changes how your car behaves at the end of a straight. If Lando can make those decisions faster and cleaner than his rivals, he doesn't need to be the most aggressive guy on the grid. He just needs to be the guy who makes fewer time-wasting corrections. That's how you build effortless speed, not by forcing the car, but by flowing with it while everyone else is fighting. And this is where his off-season becomes personal, because Lando's whole journey has been tied to one thing: pressure. He's always been fast. The question was always what happens when the moment gets loud, when the whole weekend becomes a microscope, when the mistakes aren't just mistakes, they're memes. He's spoken before about the emotional roller coaster of a season, the highs that make you feel unstoppable, the lows that make you question every part of yourself. That doesn't just disappear because you won a title. If anything, it gets sharper, because now the world expects you to be perfect. So the mental offseason matters as much as the physical one, and it's the part that decides whether 2025 becomes a launchpad or a single chapter people replay forever. This is why you hear more and more top drivers building a support system that goes beyond the team. Friends who tell the truth, coaches who don't care about PR, specialists who understand performance anxiety, focus, recovery, self-talk. Because here's the dirty secret. Formula One can make you feel alone even when you're surrounded by hundreds of people. You're in a garage full of engineers, but nobody is living your exact pressure except you. When you're champion, the loneliness can get worse because everyone assumes you're fine. Lando seems like the kind of driver who refuses to pretend he's fine just to look tough. And that honesty, if managed correctly, becomes strength. Not softness. Strength. Because the driver who understands his own mind is harder to break. Now add the 2026 complexity, and suddenly the mental game isn't just stay calm. It's stay calm while managing systems. The direction of Formula One is clear. Energy deployment matters more, strategy becomes more layered, and the line between a good lap and a great lap often lives inside the driver's decision-making. That's why simulator time becomes its own battlefield. Not the glamorous kind, the brutal kind. Because the sim is where you rehearse the season before it happens. It's where you train your brain to think ahead without overthinking, to stay sharp without being tense. If you're Lando, you're not just jumping in the sim to do hot laps. You're building scenarios, worst-case scenarios. You're practicing what happens when the balance is wrong and you still need lap time. What happens when you're in traffic and you have to manage energy while defending? What happens when your teammate is in the same machinery and their lap time is close enough to make you feel it? This is the stuff that turns into real-world confidence. Because confidence isn't a vibe, it's rehearsal. The driver who has already seen the hard situation in the sim arrives on race weekend and doesn't freeze when it happens for real. And yes, we have to talk about the teammate factor because that's the part fans pretend doesn't matter until it explodes. Oscar Piastri isn't just a teammate, he's a constant measuring stick. The one person who can look you in the eye and say without words, same car. That's a special kind of pressure because it removes excuses. When you lose to a rival in another team, you can point to car performance, strategy, tires. When you lose to your teammate, it feels like it's all you. That's why internal battles can quietly eat drivers alive, and why some champions start changing their approach the moment they win. Not because they're afraid, but because they understand the season doesn't start in Bahrain. It starts in the off-season, when you decide what version of yourself you're going to bring back. Lando's training, in that context, is also a message, not a loud one, a quiet one, the kind that only the right people hear. It tells the team, I'm not relaxing. It tells the paddock, I'm not satisfied. It tells Oscar, if you want this, you're going to have to take it from the hardest version of me, not the most comfortable one. And the most interesting part is how Lando's identity fits into all of this. He's not the classic villain champion. He's not the guy who walks into interviews with that icy stare and gives you nothing. He's open, expressive, sometimes frustrated, sometimes funny. People love that about him, and some people will use it against him. Because in sport, the moment you become champion, the world starts rewriting you. They want to turn you into the next Hamilton, the new face, the British hope, the McLaren savior. And those labels sound flattering until they become cages. So part of Lando's off-season isn't just physical and mental training. It's boundary training, learning which noise matters and which noise is designed to distract you. Learning how to keep your personality while still becoming more ruthless in the moments that require it. Because here's the real growth path for Lando. He doesn't need to become a different person. He just needs to become a more protected version of himself. A version that can feel emotion without being dragged by it. Think about how champions are tested. It's rarely the obvious moments. It's the subtle ones. The first time the new car doesn't suit your style and you can't just drive around it. The first time the upgrades don't work and the media starts sniffing a collapse. The first time your teammate beats you 3 weekends in a row and the team order conversations start bubbling. The first time you make a tiny error and it becomes a week-long debate about whether you're a real champion. The sport doesn't break you with one big punch. It breaks you with 1,000 little cuts. Off-season preparation is how you build armor against the cuts. And that's why the way Lando approaches 2026 is fascinating, because a regulation reset is where reputations are rewritten. It's where new heroes are born and old kings get questioned. It's where teams make mistakes they can't fix quickly because the whole concept is wrong. It's where drivers who are adaptable thrive. Lando has already proven he can deliver consistency across a season. Now the next test is whether he can deliver consistency while everything around him is changing. If you want a simple takeaway, it's this. Lando's off-season is less about getting ready and more about becoming dangerous in a new way. Not the loud, aggressive kind of danger. The quiet kind. The kind where you look at the timing sheets and he's always there. The kind where you watch the onboard and there are fewer corrections, fewer hesitations, fewer moments of almost. The kind where pressure doesn't make him tighten up, it makes him sharper. And look, nothing is guaranteed. That's what makes this sport addictive. A new era can humble anyone. The team might miss. The car might be a nightmare. The power unit landscape might shift. Rival teams might hit the rules perfectly. But what Lando can control, what any champion can control, is whether he shows up prepared for the chaos or surprised by it. He can control whether his body can handle the new demands, whether his mind can stay clear in the new complexity, whether his confidence is built on rehearsed truth or fragile hope. So when you see Lando in the off-season, quieter, focused, maybe less available, maybe less content-friendly, don't mistake that for him losing himself. It might be him finding the version of himself that lasts. The version that doesn't just win once, but learns how to defend without fear. The version that can handle a teammate pushing him, a rival provoking him, a regulation reset shaking the whole sport, and still come out the other side looking like a man who belongs there. Because that's the real story now. The championship wasn't the end. It was the label. And labels come with weight. The question isn't whether Lando can drive fast. We already know that. The question is whether he can carry the weight without changing who he is, while still evolving into someone the grid actually fears. Now I want to hear your take. Do you think Lando's calm champion style is exactly what will help him survive 2026? Or do you think the new era will reward the more aggressive, chaotic drivers? Drop it in the comments. And if you want the next video, I can break down who benefits most from the 2026 rule reset and why it could decide whether Lando builds an era or ends up defending his title in the hardest possible way.